It was 7:04 on a Monday morning when I got the email. No subject line. Just a chirpy little message from HR. "Let's look our best, team." The damn sparkle emoji hit harder than the burnt office coffee in my cup. My name's Rob Keene. I'm 52 years old. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I've been in IT compliance since before most of these clowns knew how to reset a password. I read the email twice, leaning back in my broken swivel chair, the one with a crack running down the right armrest. The overhead lights were flickering again, strobing off the metal casing of the busted Xerox across from me. The smell of scorched toner always hits strongest on Mondays. That email? It wasn't for the team. It was for me. Nobody else in this department wears pressed flannel sport coats or polished leather boots. Nobody else gives a damn what they look like, let alone irons their trousers. But somehow, I was the problem. Quick note: before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. This wasn't the first time HR had pulled this stunt either. Casey, the manager, was 33, all spreadsheets and fake smiles. She came in last year like she owned the place, tossing out buzzwords like synergy and internal branding, like we were some kind of startup. She found out I made $4,000 more than her back in April. Been on my back ever since. Doesn't matter that I've got 22 years in this job, or that I do the stuff nobody else can even spell: network cert chains, encryption vetting, patch traceability, the backbone crap. But to her, I'm just the grumpy old guy who dresses like an off-brand detective. Thing is, I hold federal clearance. Top tier. I don't wave it around. I don't need to. That badge in my wallet, that's not leverage. That's insurance. She doesn't get that. The only reason this company's even allowed to touch certain contracts is because I keep us compliant. Homeland Security doesn't mess around with vendors. You lose one cleared guy, you lose the job. Period. But sure, let's obsess over sport coats and try to make the guy with the burn scars on his left hand from restoring a fried power array feel like the oddball. I didn't reply to the email, just took another sip of that bitter coffee and opened up the SOC compliance logs from the weekend. By 9 o'clock, I knew it was going to be a long day. I just didn't know yet how far they were going to push it. I heard the clack of heels before I even saw her. Casey was coming. Again. She stopped just short of my desk, holding a stainless steel travel mug like it gave her authority. "Hey, Rob," she chirped, voice fake sweet. "Did you see the update about attire expectations?" I didn't bother looking up from my screen. "Yeah, nothing in there applies to me." Her silence lasted just long enough to annoy me. Then came the click of heels and the rustle of a clipboard. Lindsay, her little shadow, popped out from behind the filing cabinet like she'd been waiting for her cue. "It's about Unity, you know." I slowly turned my head and met her eyes. Unity? For who? The audit server? Lindsay blinked like she just got slapped with a policy she didn't understand. Casey didn't flinch. "It's not about targeting anyone, Rob. We're just trying to foster a more cohesive visual standard. You know, external optics matter." "You want external optics?" I swiveled my chair toward her. "Start with the busted front door badge reader. That thing's been offline for 3 days. Good luck explaining that?" In a SOC2 audit, her eyes tightened. "This isn't about infrastructure. It's about presentation." She motioned toward my pants. "For example, those vintage wool trousers might seem, well, dated. Not quite aligned with company tone." Company tone? I stood up, slowly. My boots creaked against the rubber floor tiles. "These trousers have better integrity than the email server your team botched migrating last month." Lindsay made a noise, half gasp, half laugh, but choked it down when I turned toward her. Casey folded her arms. "No one's questioning your technical skills, Rob. But when clients walk through that door, first impressions matter. You might be brilliant, but you still represent the company visually." I stepped around my chair and gestured toward the wall-mounted compliance posters, barely hanging straight. "We just want everyone to feel like they're part of something, Rob. That includes dressing like a team. This isn't a volleyball league. It's a federal subcontractor. My job is to make sure nobody accidentally leaks 10,000 encrypted records into the wild, and I do that job. Every day, without needing khakis or a company polo." Craig walked by just then, my direct manager, mid-40s, passive as tofu, khakis ironed to hell. His eyes flicked toward us, saw the tension. kept walking like he hadn't. Classic Craig. Always out to lunch, even when he's at his desk. Casey tilted her head. Rob, if we're going to build a culture of mutual respect, we can't have exceptions just because someone's been here a while. I leaned in, calm as ever. This isn't about respect. This is about you being pissed I outrank you without ever trying. That landed, her nostrils flared just a little. Lindsay shifted awkwardly, gripping her clipboard like it might save her. I grabbed the corner of a policy binder off my desk and flipped it open. Page 32, subsection E. Employees with federal clearance are permitted to adhere to external regulatory attire so long as it doesn't violate decency standards. So, unless you're accusing me of indecency, I suggest you drop it. She didn't move. I didn't blink. Craig was already halfway down the hallway by then, door closing behind him, pretending he didn't hear a damn word. Casey straightened her blazer, shot Lindsay a glance, and said, "We'll revisit this in the next culture sync." "Looking forward to it," I said, and sat back down. They walked off together, whispering. Lindsay glanced back once. I didn't watch them go. I just pulled up the security patch manifest and kept working. Their little power play, sloppy, predictable, and far from over. By mid-afternoon, I was in the break room, waiting for the microwave to finish chewing through my sad leftover meatloaf. I felt her walk in before I even turned. Same perfume, same click of those overpriced heels. Casey, loud and smug, like always. Lindsay wasn't far behind, holding her stupid clipboard like it needed emotional support. "Wow," Casey said, slow and loud, just enough for the room to hear. "Very detective drama." Lindsay snorted, couldn't help herself. Two developers standing by the fridge looked over, then immediately pretended they didn't. One opened a La Croix he clearly didn't want. I didn't flinch, just kept watching the microwave spin. Casey stepped closer. "We just want to make sure our team image reflects our values." Her eyes weren't on my face. They were on my cuffs. Custom brass, plain but polished. I turned toward her, calm. "Your values don't outrank federal law." Her expression didn't crack, but I saw the twitch in her jaw. She leaned in, fake whisper but loud enough to carry. "You know, with all the sensitive work coming up, maybe we should look reliable." I stared at her, not blinking, not smiling. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about jackets or pants or some HR memo from LinkedIn. She was fishing. She'd seen something. Maybe caught a glimpse of the Homeland Clearance badge I kept tucked behind my ID. Maybe overheard one of the encrypted cert check-in calls I took Friday afternoon. She was digging. But not because she wanted to understand, because she wanted to trap me. "You really want to talk about looking reliable?" I asked. "Let's talk about that multi-tenant firewall you approved without verifying the config. Or maybe the unvetted third-party ticketing software that's leaking metadata into the wrong environment." Her smile twitched. I had her. "I think," she said slowly, "we need to reevaluate who's aligned with the company's long-term direction." "And I think," I replied, "you're one Excel sort away from blowing a federal contract." Behind her, Lindsay looked like she wanted to melt into the vending machine. "Careful, Rob," Casey said. "Tone matters." I stepped closer, just 1 foot forward. And so does legal liability. Nobody moved. Microwave beeped. I reached in, grabbed my lunch, and looked her dead in the eye. "I've been doing this job since before you graduated," I said. "You think you're calling shots, but you don't even know what game we're playing." Casey blinked. She wasn't expecting that. Not the words, not the calm. She wanted me to raise my voice, snap, lose control, something she could document. I gave her none of it. I walked past her and Lindsay without another word, heat from the plastic tray burning through my palm. I knew what was coming next. And I was ready. I'd just finished the last bite of microwave meatloaf when Outlook dinged again. Subject, HR matter. Immediate attention. Time, 3:13 p.m. Location, room 4. B, no body text, no context, just that. I closed the message, locked my screen, and stood up slow. Nobody in the office made eye contact as I walked by. Not the junior devs, not the sysadmin 3 cubes over, not even Craig, especially not Craig. Room 4B was the kind of windowless conference box that smelled like stress and lemon-scented floor wax. I opened the door. They were already there. Casey Lindsay. And Jim, the senior ops manager, sitting stiff like someone just taught him what HR stood for this morning. Casey didn't even look up from her tablet. "Rob, go ahead and sit down." I stayed standing. "Let's not waste time." Jim cleared his throat. "We're terminating your employment effective immediately due to repeated dress code non-compliance and ongoing behavioral concerns." Straight from a script, voice flat, hands folded. I looked right at Casey. "This is about a sport coat?" She smirked. "Among other things." Lindsay slid a stack of papers across the table like she was playing poker. "Here's your exit packet. Severance details, NDA clause, final payroll schedule." I flipped through it, not a single word about security protocols. No mention of clearance, not even a box to check about chain of custody or equipment handoff. They had no idea what they were touching. Jim shifted like he felt it too, but didn't understand it. "You do realize," I said, voice calm, "that federal clearance isn't a gym membership you cancel over email." Casey leaned back, crossed one leg over the other. "Guess that won't be needed anymore." She was looking past me, at my screen behind the glass. I turned, still locked, still glowing. One alert flashing across the top. DHS, check-in, overdue, red, bold, blinking. She saw it, didn't care. I turned back to the table, slow and quiet. Set the papers down. "You just fired the only guy in this building who keeps your federal contract legal." Jim opened his mouth like he wanted to ask something, then didn't. Casey gave a tight shrug. "We've consulted legal." "You consulted your lawyer," I said. "Not theirs." Nobody answered that. I walked out without a sound, grabbed the cardboard box they always keep under the printer for toner shipments, threw in my badge, my backup flash, and the ceramic mug I'd had since '08, the one with the old agency logo worn half off. My boots echoed down the hallway, my desk light still on. Not one person looked up as I walked out. Eyes on keyboards, eyes on phones, eyes anywhere but me, until I hit the lobby. That's when it changed. I stepped into the lobby with the box under one arm, badge clipped to the top like a damn accessory. The front desk girl looked up, gave a nervous half smile, then quickly picked up the phone for no reason at all. I didn't rush, just walked steady, boots thudding soft against the tile. I was 10 feet from the glass doors when they opened. 2 men stepped in. Clean navy suits, buzz cuts, shoulders squared like they never lost a fight. DHS seals on their lapels. Not the IT audit kind, the real deal. They scanned the room fast, like they'd done this before. Not a word to the receptionist. The taller one spoke first. "We need your head of security, and the CEO, now." His tone said this wasn't a request. I stepped to the side, box still in hand, and sat down on the lobby bench next to the fake ficus plant. I didn't speak, didn't move. I just waited. 5 minutes later, the elevator dinged. The CEO, Dan something, I never bothered learning his last name, came rushing out like the floor was on fire, hair a mess, tie crooked. He saw the agent straightened up mid-step. "Hi, yes, of course. I'm Daniel. I'm the shorter agent cut him off. "You were informed of compliance oversight tied to Homeland clearance?" Dan froze. "Well, I believe that was handled internally." Casey appeared right behind him, red-faced, stumbling into the scene like she was chasing her career down the stairs. She locked eyes with me across the room. "Rob, wait, let's talk," Dan said, stepping toward me, hand half raised like he expected a handshake. "There's clearly been some miscommunication." I didn't stand. "You'll need to make an appointment." Casey blinked like she just got slapped. Dan opened his mouth, closed it, then turned to the agents with a pale, twitchy smile. I stood then, walked toward the doors, slow. The taller agent stepped in front of me, held up his badge. "Mr. Keene." I nodded. "We'd like a word." I looked at Casey once. She didn't look back. She was too busy trying not to fall apart in front of the CEO. "Sure," I said. "Let's talk." We stepped outside into the clean September air. No handcuffs, no clipboard, no warnings. The taller agent handed me a plain white envelope. You'll be contacted through secure channels within 72 hours. This location is now under preliminary review. The shorter one added, your clearance remains active. Your insight is needed. That was it. No fuss, no show. I wasn't being questioned. I was being moved, elevated. Inside the glass, I saw chaos bloom like mold. People on phones, security trying to look useful. Casey pacing like she just realized she didn't know how deep the water was. She'd tried to set a trap, and sprung it on herself. I tucked the envelope into my jacket. They fired me like I was disposable. Now they didn't even own the building anymore. I looked at the agents. You need anything else from me right now? Just be ready, one of them said. I gave a nod, and walked to my truck like I had all the time in the world. Through the glass lobby windows, I saw them get ushered into the big conference room upstairs. Corner office, long table, too many chairs, all style, no substance. I didn't go far. I stood outside by the flagpole, box still in one hand, sun cutting across the sidewalk. I didn't need to be inside to know how it was playing out. Agent Monroe, the tall one, dropped a heavy folder on the glass table. He didn't sit, just stood there, jacket still buttoned, like he'd never been off duty in his life. Dan, the CEO, leaned forward and flipped it open with shaky fingers. His eyes jumped line to line, hoping to land somewhere safe. There has to be a clause, he stammered. Right? Something we can do? Some correction window? Monroe didn't blink. Your federal contract is now void. Silence. He continued. Mishandling of cleared personnel is a direct breach. You triggered an automatic review the second you terminated clearance without notification or containment. Casey was standing to the side, arms crossed, face pale. She was trying to play neutral, like this wasn't her fault. Like she hadn't kicked the first domino. Monroe didn't let her hide long. Internal memo chains identify a Tiffany Casey as the origin point of the violation. He turned to her. That you? She nodded. Barely. The shorter agent held up a tablet, tapped twice. Her ID badge deactivated instantly. One sharp beep from the wall scanner beside the door, followed by red. Locked out. Casey looked down at her badge like it betrayed her. Lindsay, who'd been frozen behind her, didn't say a word, just slipped out the door, clipboard clutched to her chest like it owed her something. Dan dropped into the nearest chair like his knees gave out. We didn't know, he said, voice cracking. It was just dress code. Monroe stared him down. You thought it was about pants. He leaned forward, hands flat on the glass. It was about protocol. From outside, I watched it all unfold. I didn't move. Monroe pushed the folder across the table and spoke again, clear and final. You've lost contract eligibility for 5 years minimum, subject to review. If it had gone another day, this would have been an investigation instead of a shutdown. Dan put his head in his hands. No one comforted him. Casey stood there blinking, like maybe if she stayed still enough, this wouldn't be happening. But it was. Every screen in the office would be going dark soon. Systems locked. Access revoked. The contract was the backbone of this whole building. Without it, they were just another private firm with too many managers and not enough brains. And I was still outside, calm, watching. Because sometimes you don't need to burn a place down. You just let them light the match themselves. When I stepped back inside, the shift was instant. The same people who couldn't look me in the eye that morning, now they stared, whispered. A few tried weak smiles, like we were suddenly old friends. I didn't give them a thing, not a nod, not a glance. My boots echoed down the carpeted hall like a funeral march. I passed Craig, still pretending to review something on his monitor, face white, lips tight. He didn't speak. He knew better. Past the bullpen, I slowed by my old desk, still untouched. The monitor glowed on standby, login prompt blinking, my badge still active. One login trigger away from detonating a $50 million federal contract. A few folks from DevOps huddled by the snack cabinet. One of them said, "That's him," just loud enough for me to hear. I didn't stop walking. The agents flanked me again, same suits, same calm, but this time it was obvious. They weren't escorting a problem. They were guarding a resource. Me. Dan, the CEO, came rushing down the hallway, hair worse than before, sweat showing through his collar. "Rob," he panted, "look, we may have been a little hasty earlier. There's room for adjustment, compensation, title bump, 15% raise. At least I stopped, just once. The raise you can afford won't cover the therapy I'd need to forget this place." Silence. Straight silence. Lindsay was nowhere to be found. Probably in her car, Googling career changes. Casey? Last I saw, she was still locked out, pacing behind frosted glass, watching the company collapse through her own reflection. The agents opened the front doors without a word. I stepped into the sun, same box in my hand, same coat they tried to fire me for. No one followed. I didn't look back. I was 10 steps from the curb when Agent Monroe caught up to me. He didn't rush, just matched my pace, handed me a plain white card, no title, no logo, just a number. "We subcontract oversight when primary contractors collapse," he said, calm like always. "Interested?" I flipped it between my fingers. Matte finish, cold from his pocket. "I assume the pay's better." Monroe cracked a faint smile. "And the idiots are easier to spot." I pocketed the card without a word. Behind us, the building was still unraveling. I could hear muffled shouting from upstairs. Someone dropped something heavy, a printer maybe, or an illusion. Tiffany, Casey, had lost everything over a typo and a power trip. Thought she could push a button without reading the manual. She misread the job, misread the system, misread me. I took a deep breath, slow and steady. Clean September air, no toner stench, no hallway politics. Just the street, the sunlight, and the hum of engines in the distance. My badge, the real one, was still warm inside my coat pocket. Monroe didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. I knew what this was. Not a new job, not a promotion, a shift. I was being repositioned, trusted, used the way I was meant to be used, by people who understood the stakes. I walked toward my truck. "Let them rebuild," I muttered. This time, without me to clean up their mess. I climbed in, set the box on the passenger seat. No music, no radio. Just the engine, the tires, the quiet rhythm of a man who didn't fight back, because he didn't have to.